Credit card disputes as a small business owner. Always tricky, never fun, and how should you handle them and what do you actually get out of it? Hey, I'm Lauren Simpson, and I'm here to help you maximize your time and talents as a small business owner, so make sure to subscribe down below for new videos every single week. Today I'm going to be sharing my first credit card dispute experience with you, so hopefully if this ever happens to you, you are a little bit more prepared than I was. To give you a little bit of background, I run a bridal beauty business, which means that we complete hair and makeup services for brides, grooms, wedding party members, and everybody in between on the wedding day. This is the real meat and potatoes of the business I run and where the good majority of the income comes from. The TLDR reason that this credit card dispute happened was because the bride had finished paying her remaining balance since it's due 2 weeks before the wedding, and it was 9 days before the wedding when she initiated canceling the contract. I'm obviously not going to be using real names in this story, but I am going to be referencing dates so that you can see how everything unfolded from beginning to end in 1 month. August 3rd is when this bride had her makeup trial scheduled, when her wedding was taking place on August 14th. So our makeup trial takes place and we make some adjustments during the trial, which is not uncommon at all. Usually if a person comes in with a certain look in mind or they show you an inspiration photo or things like that, you do need to kind of work together. Oftentimes I like to tell people that this is a collaboration between the pro and the client. So what happens is I will tell you what will or won't work on your skin type or complexion or eye shape and things like that. And I want to make sure you are still getting something that you love, but maybe we have to meet somewhere in the middle to make it work. I also like to make it known that if I am showing any inspiration pictures that look heavily photoshopped, that is the case, and so makeup can sit or look differently on your skin. We made some adjustments, and at the end of the trial, I didn't love the look, but it was going more in the direction of what the person wanted. And so I never like to take my personal bias into consideration because there have been times where there was like a lip color, for example, that I was like, not my favorite, but then the client loved and they're like, that's it. So I want at the end of the day for the client to be happy. So we kind of left it like that. We made some adjustments and then we said, hey, I'm going to follow up with you after the trial like I always do in a couple days. And then we can go from there if there's any other adjustments you want to make on the wedding day. So I received an email only a few hours after the fact. So it was later that evening that I had received an email about the things that she wanted to change, which I have come to know now usually means that somebody is unsatisfied. To give you an idea, I usually send a trial follow-up 2 days after the fact. This is to give you a chance to wear it the entire day, see how it wears and looks in different lighting, take pictures, things like that, and then marinate on it before I then follow up and say, hey, now what are some things that you were thinking of changing? How did you like it? What did you not like? Things like that. So in this back and forth, she said that she was interested in coming in for a second trial just to see if we can maybe nail it down some more. And I said, of course, no problem. That is also something that happens from time to time. So it's pretty normal. So I went ahead and told her how it's the same price and same amount of time scheduled and what kind of time works for you. She proceeds to let me know that she expected the second trial to be complimentary since she was dissatisfied. And then I go on to explain that if you are choosing to have a second trial because you were dissatisfied after we worked as much as we could in the first one to make you satisfied, that usually that means it's a completely separate appointment. Basically, it's more time, it's more product, it's valuing the artist's time and effort that they are putting in. So after talking it out, it looked like she was just looking for a second trial, specifically about her eye makeup, not the rest. Face was fine, color match, all that kind of stuff was great. So let's just try the eyes again. So I was willing to meet her halfway and charge half for the second trial, and that seemed to be a good compromise for us both. The first trial took place on a Tuesday, and the second trial was going to take place that Friday, so it was going to be just a little over a week ahead of the wedding. 2 days later, on Thursday, I received an email stating that she had thought about it a lot more and she would not like to go through with the second trial and was ultimately looking to cancel her contract altogether for the wedding. Now, to put this in perspective, when it comes to wedding bookings, to book and solidify your date is 50% of the total contract price plus a signed contract. Those two things lock us in and our specific artist for your wedding day. The final payment is due 2 weeks before the wedding, and that is for a multitude of reasons that I've learned over the years. But that is when final payments due, and it's pretty standard among wedding vendors that a lot of people expect that payment between 1 week to 1 month ahead of the wedding, just so they don't have to deal with the exchange of money on a wedding day. So when the trial had taken place on that Tuesday, I noticed that she hadn't paid her final payment, and so now we were under the 2 week mark before her wedding. So I did tell her how we needed to finalize that payment before she left that day, which she seemed to understand. So then I took the payment, she signed off on it, and we were good to go. So this is where the credit card dispute started to arise. In my experience, when somebody is initiating a wedding cancellation, they usually understand the terms of the contract. So most often, if somebody is choosing to cancel their wedding with us, it's a dialogue that happens because sometimes they are looking for all or a portion of their retainer fee to be refunded, and it's a very case-by-case scenario, and it's a discussion per client and based on the situation. But at the end of the day, we have had where clients understand that if they are paying the retainer to hold a date and we have had to reject new bookings while we held their date, that ultimately we do need to keep the funds because we have now lost out on bookings. This becomes especially more important the closer you get to the wedding, because the closer you get to the wedding, the less likely you are to rebook it. So with that in mind, with a couple email exchanges, she expressed that she was very unhappy that she was not getting refunded any of her balance due to her cancellation being 9 days before the wedding. So again, virtually no ability to rebook that date at that point. It was both myself and another artist that were held up. Spent so much time, going back and forth and in the booking process and just all of the things that take place. I couldn't justify this one being refunded. And I did work with my attorney at the time to see if I was off base or if this made sense. I did get clarity that this was well within my rights, especially because I did have a legal contract that both parties signed. At one point, she tried to say that I didn't even countersign the contract, to which I then sent her in the final email when I was reiterating the policy in our contract. I did send her evidence on the software that we use that it was countersigned, I think the day after I received it. So August 5th is when she initiated the cancellation, and I think it was within a couple days that that was just done because there was no happy ending here, because I did have to stand my ground with the policy on this one, and then that was that. She just stopped responding. So her wedding did take place on August 14th, and of course I have no idea what she ended up doing for beauty services, but that is none of my business. And then it was just a matter of time. I was waiting for the dispute to come through because she did make it known that she was going to file a credit card dispute if we could not come to an understanding, is what she was trying to portray. Basically, if I did not refund her the amount she was looking for, she was going to dispute it, which she did. 10 days after her wedding, on August 24th, is when I was notified from Square that she filed the credit card dispute. Square is the credit card processor that I use for all invoicing and payments, which as a whole, I do love Square, by the way, and I feel like I should talk about my experiences with Square, so let me know if you want to see that. I do have a link below to get you some free processing as well if you are interested in using them, but that's a side note. That's a story for another day. So I got right to work once I saw the dispute was filed because I had time. So I think I sent all of the evidence I had in within an hour or two of getting notified. So I was definitely on it. I sent in everything I had from my contract, which clearly lists my policies with her signature, with my signature, and the evidence that I did countersign. I sent in the signed payment that she made at the trial, and I also sent in the email correspondence. To my knowledge, I was under the impression that, especially because she physically signed in person for that payment, that that was actually a bit better for me. A lot of times I do have clients pay their invoices electronically online, and so there is no like finger signature like on the phone or on the tablet. So I was hopeful that that would help me in this case. Another 10 days goes by and it is now October 4th, and I got notified that the bank sided with the customer. So what this meant was there was absolutely nothing else I could do at this point. So once the bank sides with the customer, Square automatically takes that amount and refunds it to them right away. So whether it's sitting in your Square balance, they take it from there, or they take it from your bank account, whichever they have to do. The reason the client put for the credit card dispute was that goods or services were not as described, which I thought was really interesting because in a world of makeup application that is incredibly subjective, it was one of those situations where this person didn't quite understand the dynamic of how you have to work together as, again, the client and the professional to make the look come to life. And that at the end of the day, there are obstacles to overcome as the professional to make that happen. And maybe there are certain aspects of the look that are not attainable for every person. It's also interesting because with the goods and services not being as described, I'm just curious what was meant by that, because every single application is going to be a bit different and everybody's experience is going to be a bit different. But at the end of the day, I mean, the makeup was still, we were on the path there. I think, honestly, I just think it was a big disconnect between us, which is unfortunate. And so if I had known ahead of time that it was going to be such a disconnect between us, I would have suggested that she go elsewhere to maybe someone that she would have jived with a little bit more. I learned a whole heck of a lot of lessons from this experience that I would love to share with you now that you've had a chance to hear the story. I'm appreciative of the lessons that came out of this. It was definitely not a fun time for me. It was not a good experience at all. You know, it feels yucky, especially in the year after the pandemic hit and small businesses are just trying to get back on their feet. It felt very much like I was being misunderstood and a bit taken advantage of. But feelings aside, these are the lessons that I learned. Be firm on your policies and pricing. One of the errors that I made was discounting the second trial. One of the errors that I made was trying to be a little more understanding and flexible with those policies. And I think that is where confusion comes in and a power dynamic comes in. I've just noticed that once you stand your ground on pricing and policies and you're confident and that comes across and you charge your worth, these are things that vastly increase the experience for everybody involved. It increases the experience of what the client can expect from you. It increases the experience of what you can expect from working with the client. And you come across as a more serious business owner because at the end of the day, the reason I said feelings aside, here's what I learned. It's very tricky being a small business owner because you can't let your feelings get in the way when stuff like this happens because business is business. That's just what it is. It's no personal attack against anybody. But at the end of the day, because we're a small business and we put our heart and soul into this, it feels yucky. I learned that from now on, I am holding trials for people at least 1 month ahead of time, if not more, ahead of their wedding. There are very few exceptions to this. Very few. Like, for example, I had somebody last year who was traveling from Bermuda, so she just would not, there was no possible way she was going to be there ahead of the week of her wedding. But again, because I have gotten better at vetting people, I knew it was going to be a great experience. I just expected that it was going to be like we were going to hit it off and there was going to be no issue. And I knew the look she was looking for ahead of time. So it was just communication was better. But overall, it is beneficial to have trials a bit before the wedding. You know, maybe not a year before the wedding, but a few months before is reasonable because you're not going to forget the look in that amount of time, but you are going to have time that if you want to make changes, you can do so. And so if you want to come in for a second trial, like what I tell people all the time, so a second trial is especially handy if, say, they wanted at first a very natural look. Now they're doing a 180 and they're like, I want the most drama. I want a winged liner. I want a red lip. I want all this. Then maybe a second trial is a good idea so you can compare those looks and devote all that time to one look at each one. There's just more time to communicate these changes. I also learned to take pictures of clients every step of the way if we are making changes during the trial. So this was one of the parts that I wish I did differently. So I did take pictures of the end result of what we did at the trial. And like I told you, I wasn't a big fan of the look, so it's not something I'm super proud of in that regard. But what we had done before the look at the end was really pretty, more my style, and definitely I think more of the goods and services being as described. So I'm almost wondering if part of her evidence that she submitted were those end pictures, and maybe that was against what my typical look was on Instagram or social media or my website or something like that. I would have loved to have that to show as an option of, hey, we worked and we did several kind of looks and variations to try and get there, just to show the efforts were there. This has happened several times since, where clients will switch things up several times at the trial. So a little more eyeshadow here, a little bit more liner here. Let's try the, 5 different lip colors, a little less blush, more blush, whatever it is. I like to take pictures every step of the way now. Not only because it benefits the client, because then I send those pictures to them so they can compare after the trial and say, you know what, I really liked the second variation over the fourth. But it also then it helps me to see how we went along and how we got where we did. I learned that credit card disputes 9 times out of 10 side with the customer. I was worried about this from the moment I submitted everything. Honestly, I was worried about this from the moment I knew she was going to do a dispute. I was doing my research and I was seeing how things went and what you should or shouldn't submit, and things like that. And pretty much across the board, the experience is that they side with the customer. And I think it's for the sheer fact that that's their customer at the end of the day. The credit card company or the bank cares about who's paying them. So at the end of the day, that was the customer. They wanted to keep them happy because they don't want them to leave. That's what I'm truly thinking is at the root of it. So it's really discouraging as a business owner that no matter the evidence, I mean, I had rock solid evidence of why this dispute made 0 sense and was uncalled for, and was unfair to the business, but didn't matter. They still sided with the customer. So know that going into it. I, of course, I was going to put up the good fight because I think that you shouldn't be taken advantage of as a business owner. And so I think that at the end of the day, this was still important to do as an experience. But go into it knowing that there's a really good chance that you may not win. At the end of the day, this was not about the monetary amount that was being refunded. I was okay. I was okay with that being refunded. It didn't make or break me. At the end of the day, we were coming back pretty strong the year after COVID hit. And it was more discouraging than anything, just given the fact that I am so willing to work with people. And I am so passionate about getting people their desired end result, and that I knew I could do it, and I wasn't given that last chance with the second trial, and so that was a bit discouraging for me. And it was just discouraging that policies and a legal contract that you sign, whether you read it or not, you are signing a legal contract. And so it's discouraging when I will have clients who they sign it in 2 seconds and I'm like, I paid I don't know how much money for for these contracts, and they are there to protect both of us. So it's in your best interest as the client to always give it a read. When I was a bride myself a few years ago, I made sure I read every vendor's contract front to back and that I understood everything because, again, I valued that this is something that's really important to understand between us, no matter if we're friends or not. So yeah, it was more about the principle of the matter for me than it was about the monetary amount. So it just, at the end of the day, was discouraging when we didn't win. So I hope that sharing my experience was helpful for you. I'm going to take a guess that if you watched this video that you may be going into your first credit card dispute, or you may be looking on for tips and tricks on how to go about that successfully. I'm sorry to say that I don't know. I've never had a successful credit card dispute in my favor, but I hope that this experience at least kind of opens up some brainstorming for you on how to better go about yours. Remember to check out my Square link in the description box down below to get some free processing if you're looking for a new credit card processor and invoicing system, and I will see you in my next video.